السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah. Thank you guys for joining me this afternoon. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides my tongue and that we're able to come to a better understanding of, some of the things that have been creating some, problems for people, comments and statements that have been made, not just by Sheikh Saeed, but have been made previously by others. And hopefully, with all of these mistakes that are being made, we come to a better understanding. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran about the Qissatul Ifk, the story of the lie that was told on Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And some of the Sahaba actually fell victim to the gossip and the carrying of the narrative. Many of the Sahaba had fallen into that as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur, لا تحسبوه شر لكم بل هو خير لكم. Don't consider it an evil thing that this has happened, but consider it a good thing. Because there's a lot of lessons that are going to come out of it. The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, they learned a lot from that situation. There were a lot of Islamic rulings that were revealed as a result of that situation regarding Aisha. There was a lot of rekindling of relationships, as Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, his cousin was one of the ones who fell into spreading the lie about Aisha. And Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu had sworn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sworn by Allah that he would never, give his cousin any more sadaqah because of, engaging in the lie on Aisha. And, after that was over with, they rekindled their relationship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kind of chastised Abu Bakr about, swearing by Allah that he would never assist him again financially. So there was a lot that came out of that. So while, it pains us to hear over and over again, Islamic leaders, from different ethnicities, uttering disparaging and dismissive and, just pretty downright degrading comments about African Americans and African American culture. While that is painful to hear continuously, it also helps us to move through a lot of the uncomfortable conversations that we just cannot initiate on our own. We can't sit down at the table as a ummah and have these conversations. But, when these incidents happen, it forces the conversation. It forces the conversation. I remember years ago, the last time I attended the New Jersey Dawah conference, and we had, I kind of went a little rogue, and I invited Sister Nadira to come and, speak her piece. And one of the promoters of that conference, he came to me after the conference was over, and he said some of the elders, and I believe that's probably why I'm not invited. One of the many reasons why I'm not invited back to their program, and that's okay. I'm at a different place in my life right now, anyway. So that's cool. But he came. One of the organizers of the event. He came to me after the event was over, and he said to me, "Some of the elders took issue with some of your language and some of the things that you were talking about, and we were talking about the usage of the word nigger, and many." South Asians, Indo-Pak, Arab, South Asians, Indo-Pak, as well as Arab children feel that it is okay for them now to use the phrase nigger. And they use it when they talk, amongst themselves. Yes, they use it. It's very common. It's very common. African Americans are not the only people that use the phrase nigger at this point. And so I spoke on that, very, with language that was, very clear. And he stopped me afterwards, and he was like, some of the elders took issue with it. And here again, so we won't initiate the conversation. But then when mistakes like this are made, it forces the conversation. Now we have to have a conversation. You understand? And I think it was a big mistake for us to ask Sheikh Saeed to apologize. My issue wasn't an apology, because why would I make someone apologize for something that they actually feel or they actually mean? Why would we force an apology? You know what happens when you force a person to apologize is that they make a bigger mistake. The same thing with Hamza Yusuf. What he uttered in his, in his speech, in his statement about the African American, the breakdown of the African American family, he meant that. He meant that wholeheartedly, because he wasn't reading from a paper. He that came from his heart. Sheikh Saeed, when he was on the minbar, he wasn't reading from a script. That came purely from his heart. And why would you ask somebody to apologize for something that they actually meant? So what they end up doing is making a bigger mistake, because you are forcing them to do what is unnatural. You're forcing them to do what is unnatural. They spoke from, you know what I mean? I didn't want an apology. You know what I mean? I didn't want to stand in your discomfort, stand on your words. Because when you stand on your words, you force, now we can have a conversation. Oh, that's how you feel? Okay, cool. Now let's have a conversation. You understand? It's just like the owner of the basketball team who made the comment about African Americans, and then they fired him. And Jay-Z said, well, why did y'all fire him? Because now we can't have a conversation. You know what I mean? When you fire him, like, now he can go hide behind whatever, it is he's doing. And now we've lost the opportunity to, have that conversation. So when things like this happen, like, we have to stop rushing and forcing people to write an apology for something that they actually meant. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't, you feel some type of way about a people, about an individual, you know what I mean? Like, why would you ask him to apologize? I think I speak on behalf of all African Americans whose ears were burdened with hearing that. I didn't want an apology. Apologize for what? For making, for saying how you actually felt. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people. I speak from my heart, and I respect people who speak from their heart. If you tell me to my face I don't like you, I respect you more than for you to throw shade on my name behind my back in a very cowardly manner. Then I lose respect for you. You know what I mean? Like, I lose respect for you when you do that. But when you tell me to my face, I don't like you. You know what I mean? I've never liked you. I don't like you. I'm cool with that. I respect that. You understand? Like, that's just me. That's who I am. You know what I mean? I can't speak for everybody else. All right. So let me just enter into this conversation with a dua that Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala made. I think it's very pertinent at this point. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Allahumma man kana ala hawa أو على رأي وهو يظن أنه على الحق وليس هو على الحق فرده إلى الحق حتى لا يضل من هذه الأمة أحدا. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Oh Allah, listen to his dua. He said, Oh Allah, man kana ala hawa, whoever is upon the path of following his own desires. Aw ala ra'yin, or he holds an opinion that is antithetic to the truth. وَهُوَ يَظُنُّهُ عَلَى الْحَقِّ, and he believes that he is upon the truth. فَرُدَّهُ إِلَى الْحَقِّ, he believes that he is upon the truth. وَلَيْسَ هُوَ عَلَى الْحَقِّ, but he's not upon the truth. فَرُدَّهُ إِلَى الْحَقِّ, return him back to the truth. حَتَّى لَا يُضِلَّ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ أَحَدًا, so that he does not lead anyone astray from our ummah. And this khutbah was written to, some of the deviant groups. This was an introduction to what he was getting ready to say um, in his dealing with, the different groups, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the different groups during that time. And you can see that the sincerity, that although I'm about to spank you, you know what I mean? Like, although I'm about to spank your behind, but I also want you to be guided right. I do want guidance for you. As um, you know, it's as someone myself who has been under public scrutiny, at a particular time in my life, there's a sensitivity that I do have to Sheikh Saeed. There's a sensitivity that I have, and I know exactly what he's experiencing right now. I know exactly what he is going through right now. I've been there. I know exactly how that feels. Although in his situation is a little different. His was warranted. Mine's was, just some group of, ignoramuses that had an agenda, and I just happened to be the pawn to, get them to their next position. Nonetheless, I know what it feels like. So, while there is a part of me that is, pretty, upset with the fact that, he had the audacity to utter what he uttered on Jumu'ah. You know what I mean? The best day of the week in the best place on earth, which is the masjid. You know what I mean? And you speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creatures, the best of mankind. Like, you on the best day of the week, you in the best place on earth, speaking to the best of mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, aware servants. You know what I mean? And then you drop the ball completely. Rather than serving, them, you took an opportunity to throw an entire race of people, under the bus, just to kind of for your own agenda. And we'll get to that. Nonetheless, Imam Ahmed said, "Oh Allah, whoever is upon a path of following their desires or holding an opinion that is antithetic to the truth, while he believes that he is upon the truth, but he is not upon the truth, return him to the truth so that he does not lead anyone from our ummah astray." And I'll supplement that with another dua. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'a wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. Oh Allah, so show us the truth as it is and give us the ability to follow it, and show us falsehood as it is and give us the ability to stay away from it. There's an old proverb that reads, "A drunk mind speaks a sober heart." And I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with this proverb. Many of you are familiar with this phrase. All right, but let's unpack that phrase a little bit, because it is totally applicable to this situation. It means that alcohol, or any type of intoxicant, whether in the form of a liquid substance or a natural chemical that the body produces. Our bodies produce chemicals that are, almost equivalent to the type of chemicals that that some people ingest, like heroin, like cocaine. And our bodies produce, chemicals that are similar to those particular substances and has the same effect on us. All right. And that chemical, one of those chemicals, is dopamine. Our body produces dopamine, which is called the feel good neurotransmitter. Right. The brain is a chemical factory. Absolutely. It produces, right? And when you are on the minbar and you're standing in the front of a group of people, you know what I mean? Like, your dopamine levels are going up. It feels good. You're in front of the people and it's almost as if you are intoxicated. It is similar to being intoxicated. Wallah al-Azim. Even I posted a link on my Facebook page about the internet, and that constantly looking at social media, looking at Instagram, it gives you that same feeling of being intoxicated. The dopamine levels rise almost a few molecules less than being high on cocaine. Absolutely. This is facts. I kid you not. Fact. This is a fact. And so, what I'm saying is that when people say, "Oh, I was drunk," right? They used to call liquor or alcohol, they used to call it truth serum. Truth serum, right? Because when you drink alcohol and you get intoxicated enough, you'll start saying how you feel. You'll start spewing things that you wouldn't say if you were sober, right? And this is, a lot of young guys, they, take Molly, they pop pills, they do a lot of stuff, and they real tough when they're on drugs, which is why a lot of the murders, a lot of criminal acts, statistically, most of the time are done when people are under the influence of some type of drug or alcohol, because it gives you, it gives you this super strength. You know what I mean? And so, while we tend to think that being intoxicated is the cause for a person to utter a phrase that he might later on have to apologize, it is not the alcohol. It is not the intoxicant that allows you to say what you want to say. All right. Rather, alcohol, the intoxicant, it only lowers the inhibitions. So you're not guarded when you are intoxicated. You are not guarded, which is why when you are intoxicated, you speak truth. You say exactly how you feel because your inhibitions have been lowered now due to the alcohol. So it's not that the alcohol made you say what you said, and then once you sober up, you want to take back what you said. No, you meant every word of what came out of your mouth. The alcohol just lowered your inhibitions. You guys follow me? All right. So what the person says is genuinely how they feel. The alcohol or the chemical merely lowers the inhibitions, making it okay or giving the person permission to say exactly what they feel. And when you are on the minbar, I'm telling you as an imam, someone who has been giving khutbahs for the vast majority of my life as a Muslim, I can tell you that when you are on the minbar, there are heightened levels of dopamine. You are intoxicated. You understand? You are intoxicated. And when you utter a phrase or a statement, you know what I mean? Like while you are under those type of chemicals, usually it comes from a genuine place. You meant every word that you said. Because then you followed it up. Like it's not like you said it and then you kind of, as your mind is going, you kind of recognize like, wow, I kind of went too far. But a mistake, a mistake is saying Allah said, but it was actually a hadith. Or saying the Prophet ﷺ said, and it was actually an ayah from the Quran. That's a mistake. Saying that the vast majority, he said all, kulluhum, aw mu'adhamahum, all of them, rather some of them, most of them are born out of, fornication and adultery. That's not a mistake. And then you followed it up with an example of a convert from the African American community to add insult to injury, right? You followed it up with an example, you understand, to justify and to validate your point. You further validated your point, which meant that every word that came out of your mouth, you meant. So why are you apologizing? Just stand in your discomfort. Just stand in your discomfort. Like, all right, the pressure's on. You offended a whole race of people, a whole nation of people that are connected to other, nations and other races. And now the pressure is on you. Stand in that discomfort. Those were your words. Own it. Say, that's how I felt. That's how I feel. Now, if you guys can bring me some information that can bring me some clarity about what I said, then I'm open for a discussion. And, quiet is kept. Shout out to Brother Moon for all of you who said, oh, why didn't you talk to the brother on the side? Or why didn't you, why are you, embarrassing him? Or why are you doing this out in public? I reached out to Sheikh Saeed for all of you who would like to know. I reached out to him. So you can save all of that. Like, what kills me, and shout out to Brother Gaddith. He said something that was profound, something that was sent to me. He said that if it was an African American who had said the same exact thing to about a Somali culture, or about any other culture, we would have been dragged through the ringer, public apology or not. And there is a double standard. I want you guys to understand that for those of you who are listening who are not African Americans, you guys function with a double standard. There's certain rules that apply to certain people that don't apply to others. Because if I would have said that, I would have been drunk through the ringer. Shadid Muhammad, we would have never heard the last of it. And then, but the fact of the matter is that you followed it up with an example of an African American who converted to Islam, and then he had 40 girls, 40, like come on, man, like that's an exaggeration. You embellished the story. Allahu a'lam whether that even happened. You know what I mean? Allahu a'lam whether that story even has any relevance, because at this point, everything that comes out of your mouth is questionable. Everything that comes out of your mouth is questionable. You know what I mean? Shout out to Sheikh Yusuf Rios, for, Wallah al-Azim. Let me just pause right here. Let me pause here. I'm going to come back to this point. The thing that I love about how collectively everyone responded to this, as how we were able to put whatever differences aside, and kind of deal with this situation. And wallahi, as I was riding home from Starbucks, grabbing my coffee, and I'm thinking about, what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, because there's a lot of pressure doing this, right? This is not easy. Opening up you got two recordings, I'm sure you guys are recording, and the angels on top of that are recording. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shahidun alayna, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a witness over everything that we're doing. So this is not easy. It is not easy to get up in public and to deal with a mistake of a supposedly Muslim scholar in a manner that that you don't transgress certain boundaries. You know what I mean? So it's not easy doing this. I don't get pleasure out of doing this. You know what I mean? I was living my life. I don't give public lectures. I'm living my life. This was brought to my attention, and I felt it was at very least, obligatory upon me to, at least, speak my piece on behalf of those who don't have a voice, don't have a platform, and don't have the ability, to have their words be heard. And this is what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with a platform, and I'm going to use that platform to speak on behalf of the people. So as long as blood flow through my veins. But the point that I'm making is that I love the way that we came together. I hope that we just kind of keep this same energy. Keep this same energy, man. Not just when somebody attacks a particular individual or group of individuals from amongst us. The Prophet ﷺ described the Muslim Ummah as one body. That we are like kajasadin wahidin, like one body. When one part aches, the other parts of the body, they feel it as well. It reverberates. It reverberates. And it's important that, we keep the same energy all the time, not just when there's an infraction in our ummah. Not with, and you know what I mean? Like, and I don't want us to, just kind of shun Sheikh Saeed. I don't want, because it could be him today and it could be me tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I want, Islamic speakers and preachers and people who jump out there to refute individuals to keep in mind that it might be you tomorrow. So, when you deal with mercy. You deal with the person the way that you would want to be dealt with yourself. With mercy and with compassion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the believers that they are merciful between themselves. And so even though we are correcting Sheikh Saeed publicly, just like what he said publicly, we are correcting him out of mercy, out of love for him. You understand? Sheikh Saeed, if this ever reaches you, I want you to know we love you, man. But you wrong, and we're going to correct you. And us correcting you doesn't mean that we wash our hands of you, and this is the other side of that. Sometimes we go too far in our rebuke. We go too far in our rebuttal. We go too far, and we end up pushing the person outside of the fold of Islam. You understand? You go too far. And we have to know, that we deal with each other with mercy, even when we're correcting you. We're correcting you with mercy, with the intention of you coming back to what is correct. So that you come back to what is correct. We don't want you to leave Islam. This is what the Salafis do. The Salafis, when they, get a hold of you, they keep going and transgressing against you, your family, your children. Nobody is safe until you eventually just leave Islam. That's not what we're doing here. That is not what we're doing here. We're correcting him out of love, out of compassion. He's still part of our brother. He's still a brother of ours. And inshallah, once, as African Americans, once we're done with him, then perhaps the Somali community, they'll take him in the room and they'll school him and fix him up. And the next time he steps on a minbar, inshallah ta'ala, he'll understand the importance of, being responsible with your words. He'll understand the importance, because I'm sure the Somali community, got plans to, make sure that they educate him. And that I know of by fact. I know that, as a fact, that they're going to straighten them out. All we're doing right now is clarifying, not just to the Somali community, because even to the African Americans, we got some self-hating Negroes amongst us, that I'm scrolling through some of the comments and I see African Americans saying, well, I don't see what he said was wrong. It's the truth. Most of us were born from zina. It's like, God damn it. Are you serious? Are you really serious? You really going to sit here and co-sign that bullcrap? You going to really sit here and say, I don't see what the problem is. Most African Americans are born from zina? Are you freaking kidding me, man? How much self-hatred does it take to create Negroes like you? Self-hating. And in the words of Malcolm, man, who taught you to hate yourself, man? From the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Who taught you to hate yourself? Are you serious? Don't you know where they get the statistics from is connected to a system that has been designed to socially marginalize us completely and shape the way that the world sees us? I mean, like, are you kidding me, man? Can't make this stuff up. So this is not about just the Somali community, because I think y'all need to be educated. Some of y'all need to be educated. I'm going to take you to school today. You're going to get a history lesson today. But some of these self-hating African Americans, they need to be taken to school as well. And if there are any Arabs or Indo-Pacs that are listening, that they need to listen to this too, you're gonna get a whole lesson today too. All right. So the fact of the matter is that you meant what you said. You meant what you said, and that's okay. There is an Islamic context for this, meaning saying something out of your mouth, but harboring something deeper behind the words. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ بَدَتِ الْبَغْضَاءُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَمَا تُخْفِي صُدُورُهُمْ أَكْبَرُ. That hatred has appeared on their tongues, but what their hearts conceal is far worse. Meaning, there are deeper implications behind words. And what Sheikh Saeed said, although it rubbed you the wrong way as it relates to what he said, apparently, the implications of his words are even worse. What he implied is far worse. Meaning, sometimes an individual can express a thought out loud, but what they harbor in their hearts is far worse than what they have said. They didn't express the true nature of how they felt, because sometimes you can't really express how you really feel. But we can tell by the implications of your words that you meant more than what you said. All right. And this brings me to my point of the discussion today with respect to what was said by Sheikh Saeed during his khutbah regarding African Americans as a whole, because he didn't leave much room for erring on the side of caution. He didn't err on the side of caution. He said all of them, most of them. And I don't know where you got that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where you got that statistics, or whether it was just coming from a place, because he didn't quote any statistics. So the only other thing that I can think of is that, you have bought into the stereotypes about African Americans, or this is something that you just kind of felt deep down inside within yourself, right? Nonetheless, his statement, although troublesome, to say the least, is not as much of a concern for me and many African Americans as it's troublesome and it's grossly inaccurate, but that's not the troublesome part. It's not as much of a concern as the driving force behind the actual comment. You know what I mean? I'm not one for minoring in the major and majoring in the minor, so I'm not going to take a whole bunch of time dwelling on the inaccuracies of what he said. I'm not even going there. If anybody is listening right now who believes that most African Americans were born out of zina, you need to just log off, sign off, and go, and go educate yourself. I'm not even, you know what I mean? I'm not even dealing with that. All right, as they say, al ma'ruf la yu'arraf. Something that is known doesn't have to be explained. I'm not even dwelling on that. What bothers me more than anything else is why non-black Muslims, I'm not talking to the Somali community right now, because you guys are black. I don't care how much you bleach your skin. I don't care how much you hate the way that you look and where you come from, because you got some self-hating Somalis out there as well. You make fun and you make mockery of Somalis that come with darker skin. That's a fact. That's a fact. Trinidadians, you have the same thing. When I went to Trinidad, I went to Trinidad, Tobago. They have the same thing there. The darker skins. I mean, like, this stuff goes on everywhere. This is self-hating behavior. Self-hating behavior. But I'm now talking about Indo-Pak, Indians, Pakistanis, and Arabs. This is for you right here. All right. Non-Black Muslims tend to see African American culture as a degenerate anomaly, almost as if other cultures are not riddled with the same or even more challenges and elements of dysfunction. You know what I mean? So while as African Americans, our entire culture is defined by a small minority from amongst us as, being degenerate, as being dysfunctional, right? Our entire culture is defined by that. You'll find, other cultures have the same levels of dysfunction, degeneracy, right? Deplorable, immoral immorality. They have it. However, their culture is never defined by that. They're always seen as, like a white shooter who goes and shoots up a school. That doesn't define the whole white culture. The whole white culture is pure, it's fine. Yet we see that majority of American terrorism has been at the hands of young, angry white man with a gun. That's a fact. That's a fact. Yes, you have murders in the African American community. You have murders in the African American community. But give me one example of an African American. I don't care. You could take the toughest nigga from the hood. Toughest nigga from the hood that carry a gun on him with his Timberland boots and his braids, all of the characteristics that have non-black people scared. You know what I mean? You see a young black man with some braids in his hair and a puffy jacket and Timberland boots, and you automatically assume he's a thug. But the white guy with a trench coat on, with his blonde hair and his blue eyes, you've been ready to give him your left arm. Yet he's the one that will walk into a school and shoot teachers, shoot children with no mercy, no compassion, no fear of repercussions. You understand? Give me one dude from the hood that has ever gone up to a school and shot a school up. Yet, but they'll tell you that we are the worst of the people. You know what I mean? We are the worst of the American population. And this starts with this whole idea of black on black crime, right? When a white person kills another white person, they never say white on white crime, but it's always black on black crime in the ghettos, in the hood. Well, if we're all poor people living in an environment, like, who else is going to do the killing? Who else is going to do the killing? But you'll never hear that term used for any other culture. Meanwhile, what Asians, what Chinese people are doing in China to other Chinese people, you will never hear Chinese on Chinese crime. That is a slogan. That is a phrase that has been, relegated to African Americans. That is only for us. Black on black crime. And then you have people like Hamza Yusuf who will use that in his lecture and say, well, black people kill black people at a greater rate. It's like, where are you getting that from? Caucasians have wiped out an entire generation of other Caucasians. Are you under the guise of the cross, under the guise of Christianity? Did you not see the Civil War that went on here in America? Did you not do any research, any history? You gotta be freaking kidding me, man. This has to be a sick joke. And you guys buy into that stuff. Black on black crime. So when a white guy goes up to a school and kills 30 people, children included, we'll never say white on white crime. But it is white on white crime. He went to a white school. He went to a predominantly white school and he killed white teachers, white children, and no one ever says that is white on white crime. Why? Because black on black crime is something that has been totally, created specifically for us. We'll get into that. All right. So we are not the only culture that has this type of dysfunction. I mean, I had an Arab sister during one of my lectures. I was in Philly one time and I had an Arab sister say out loud during the lecture that all African Americans that have multiple wives, the conversation was about polygyny, right? And this Arab sister said, in front of everybody, she said, all African Americans that have multiple wives are all on welfare anyway. Just a blanket statement. The lecture is still on Periscope if you can find it. She said all African Americans that are in polygyny are all on welfare anyway. Just broad brush, right? And you can tell, like, she wasn't well read. This didn't come from any statistic sheet. This didn't come from any Pew research. You know what I mean? Like, this didn't come from anywhere, any academic. This came purely from her heart, how she saw us as a people, and from the stereotypes that have been fed to her. She said all African Americans that are in polygyny are on welfare anyway. And in reality, in many states, Caucasians, white people, account for more of the people that are on welfare and government assistance than blacks. You understand? Like, where in the hell are you guys getting these facts from? Let's shift the paradigm a little bit. The majority of people that are on government assistance. I live right here in Delaware. I live right here in Delaware. And this is statistics. These are things that they do research on, and you can go find out for yourself. The vast majority in certain states, the vast majority of the people that are on welfare and government assistance are white, not black. And that's a fact. So let's debunk that. Let's debunk that. You guys are walking around believing that we all on welfare. None of us work. We're all poor and just having babies and children, and this contributes to the way that you view us. So when we walk into a masjid, you don't give us salams. When you see us when you see us in a mall or you see us out and about, you don't give us salam because you don't even see us as a human being. You don't even, let alone a Muslim. You know what I mean? Let alone a Muslim. We just happy to be Muslim. Salam alaikum. And it's just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Right. Hamza Yusuf, he eloquently surmised that the dilemma with the African American community was the breakdown of the black family, right? That's what he said, so callously, so easily. The problem with African American. This is a Caucasian American who's now become an expert on black issues. MashaAllah, expert on black issues. You might be an expert on a lot of things. Black issues, you've clearly proven that you are not an authority on black issues. Clearly. But he, surmised that the problem with the African American community is the breakdown of the black family. With one sentence, he summarized our entire problem as African Americans, rendering all of our black scholars, thinkers, researchers, he rendered all of them incompetent and irrelevant because he had the answer. The problem is the breakdown of the black family. Fix the black family and you'll fix all of your issues. MashaAllah. That's great. Got it all. And that within itself comes from white privilege. That comes from a privilege that you could say that with such ease, with such callousness. You could say that. That comes from white privilege. Because an African American, no matter how learned, no matter how much of authority he is on social issues, he would never come in on public space and say the simple issue with white America is this or that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so if the problems that we see with African Americans all stem from the breakdown of the black family, then what shall we say of the white community? If all the dysfunction you see in the black community is the breakdown of the black family, then what should we say about the white community with its opioid crisis right now? Right? When it was black people that was on crack cocaine, it was put them in jail, put them in prison. Many of our parents, have felony convictions right now because they were caught with crack cocaine. If you lived in New York and they had the Rockefeller law, your father or your mother was given, 3 to 5 years or, 5 to life, the Rockefeller law, just for one vial of crack cocaine. Put them in prison. That was the solution to that. But now that we have white people on opioids, we have an opioid crisis, right? But when you go back to the 80s, they called it a crack epidemic, right? Understand the language, because there's a certain language that applies to us that don't apply to other people. It's a crack epidemic. But now, in today's time, white children, are now being addicted to opioids, right? Crystal meth and all of these other, Molly and all of these other drugs, right? We have an opioid crisis. Right. So what do we do with an opioid crisis? What do we do with a crack epidemic? We get rid of all of the people that are on crack, put them in jail. What do we do with an opioid crisis? We start to provide services. You understand? We provide services. So now we're opening up all types of drug rehab centers. We're counseling. You follow me? Like there's a different. Meanwhile, Indo-Pak Arabs, you guys move here from your countries. You have no clue of the history of this country and everything. What you have is a Eurocentric worldview that is the remnants of the colonization of the countries that you guys came from. If you came from West Africa, then you were colonized by the French or the British. If you came from East Africa, Somali, Kenya, Ethiopia, you came from East Africa, you was colonized by the French, right? And you have to understand that a lot of the history books that you guys study, a lot of this stuff, all of that stuff was designed to paint black people the exact way that many of you guys see us. Right. So if the problem with the black community is the breakdown of the black family, if that's the problem, the breakdown, well, then what do we say about the breakdown of the white family? What do we say about the you know what I mean? Like what do we say about the white community with its high opioid crisis, the rates of suicide amongst Caucasians? What do you say about the domestic terrorism, school shootings, church shootings, movie theater shootings, and other shootings that account for much of America's modern day nightmare rather than the American dream? How is it that Hamza Yusuf managed to surmise our entire cultural crisis, yet not one lecture did he ever do devoted to summarizing and addressing his own cultural crisis in the white community? This only serves the agenda of the hegemony. This serves the agenda of the hegemony, right? To continuously discredit and to shape the way the world views African Americans. And that is what toxic people do. When they can't control you, they control how other people see you. So the fact that you had to let us go from slavery, you no longer controlled us. We had Black Wall Street. We had, just leave us alone and we can develop our own. You understand? But no, we're going to let you go from slavery. We don't control you anymore. But now we're going to control how people see you. You understand? All of these false news. If we didn't learn anything from Donald Trump, we learned that there's false news. We do know that now. False news reports. All of this stuff about, African Americans being kidnapped. I believe that kidnapping is real, but maybe not at the degree that it is being pushed, because all that is doing is creating fear amongst African Americans. Fear. So now we are afraid. With the police shootings and all of these shootings that are going on, this is about fear mongering. There was never a time, me growing up, where I ever felt in fear around a white person. Ever. Never felt in fear of them. Ever. Never felt in fear of them. But now you have African Americans now that walk around now taking second glances when you see a group of white men, because you don't know that's the fear. For those of you that are on Instagram, my phone is going to die soon. Unfortunately, I'm going to plug it in. I don't know how long it's going to last, but you can always go to Periscope. It's open on Periscope, inshallah. Okay, so hopefully I just plugged it in for a little bit. Hopefully that'll buy you guys some time. If not, then you guys got to go to Periscope, inshallah. If not, it's being recorded, inshallah, and we'll make it available for you guys later. Okay, so this is what toxic people do. When they can't control you, they control how other people see you. And this is exactly what the news media is about. This is exactly what movies are about. This is what that depict African Americans as nothing more than slave. All this slave narrative, these slave movies that continuously keep coming out, and you guys keep supporting, right? Because we love entertainment. So you go see the Harriet Tubman movie. It's pure entertainment. I would never spend a dime of my money on that. Go read a book. Go read her history. Her biography has been documented, authentically documented, certified. Hollywood gets a hold of it. Obviously, they're going to embellish it. They're going to put stuff in it because the overall objective is to paint African Americans as inferior. It's to paint us as criminals, to paint us as, lawbreakers. So it only justifies your eyes. It justifies in your mind when a police officer kills an African American. In your mind, you believe, well, they break the law anyway. As you hear people say all the time, well, you should have just followed the police officer's instructions. How many African Americans have been murdered following the police officer's instructions? But these are subliminal messages that are planted into your head under the guise of entertainment so that you continuously see us in this light. So here we go, putting our entire narrative, painting our entire narrative with a few easy strokes. African Americans are like this, they're like that, and that's the end of it. So as for the first comment that Sheikh Saeed made, he said most African Americans don't even know who their fathers are. That was his comment. Most African Americans don't even know who their fathers are. Okay. Albeit, there are plenty African Americans who don't know who their fathers are. Plenty African Americans who don't know who their fathers are. Just like there are plenty whites that don't know who their fathers are. There are plenty Hispanics that don't know who their fathers are. There are plenty Somalis who don't know who their fathers are. Am I lying? Am I lying? So you mean to tell me everyone in the Somali community from Minnesota to California to Atlanta to Canada, the projects in Canada, don't you know that they have a project in Canada that is predominantly populated by Somalis? So are you telling me that everyone in that project knows who their father is? There's no zina. A lot of the Somali women, unfortunately, we have to have this discussion. There's high rates of prostitution among Somali women in places like Atlanta and other places. Are you telling me all of the children, Somali children, know who their fathers are? Are you serious? I find that very hard to believe. I find that very hard to believe. So, even those of you who have your biological father in your house, many of you still don't even know who your fathers are due to the emotional unavailability of your father, the physically detached father who's there physically but emotionally somewhere else. You never really had a conversation, and maybe perhaps this will explain why a lot of Somali boys join gangs. They turn to a life of crime, and a lot of Somali girls start hustling for validation by removing their hijab, bleaching their skin, taking off their hijab for likes and all of these things. Perhaps that's as a result of an absent father. You understand? And I'm not throwing Somalis under the bus. I just want Sheikh Saeed to understand that what you said was very unilateral. You took a very unilateral approach to addressing social issues. And if you are not social issues are not your thing, then you would probably do better not even discussing social issues in your khutbahs or in your lectures. Period. Until you educate yourself. Until you educate yourself. We're like Sheikh Saeed is not, like a fresh graduate from an Islamic university. You just graduated yesterday. You're 50 something years old. You have been mounting the minbars since I was a new shahada. I remember when the first khutbah I ever heard of his, he gave a khutbah in East Orange, New Jersey. Abu Muslima let him come to the masjid and give a khutbah. And this was like in 2000, 99, 2000. That was the first time I ever heard of him. So you have been giving khutbahs at bare minimum for the past 25, almost 30 years of your life. You don't get a pass. You don't get oh, nobody reached out to me. Like, I did reach out to you. I text you. You text me back and you said, oh, I'm at the hospital. I'll give you a call. I said, yes, I'll be waiting for your call. You never called all the way up. And this was yesterday. I still never heard from you. No call back. Brother Shadid, not that you owed me a phone call, but at least I extended myself to you. Thank you, Brother Matmoon, for giving me his number. I at least reached out to you. So for all of you, excuse makers, always you got so many excuses for people that you love. But the people that you don't give a damn about, you don't make not one excuse, because it had it been me that did that, it would have been, oh, Shadi Muhammad hates Somalis, he dislikes this, dislikes that. No excuses. But when it comes to people that you love and that you care for, you're going to make every single excuse in the book. So take this and put it in your pipe and do whatever you want to do with it. I reached out to him, so nobody can say, oh, you putting him on blast in public and you never even reached out to him. I'm not that person. I'm not that person. If anything, and anybody who knows my track record, out of everybody, I have always followed the rules. Nobody follows the rules when it comes to me, and that's cool, because that's true. That's how you choose to deal with things. But I follow the rules of Islam. At first, I was like, nah, I'm not reaching out to him. And then when I saw his apology, I was like, no, I have to. It is a must that I speak to this man personally, because that apology was not an apology. It was a response. It was a response to public pressure. It was not an apology. Anyway, absentee dads is the actual term to say, oh, there's a whole great group of people, whole race of people who don't know their fathers. Is very dismissive, very disrespectful, very insensitive. All right. Do you know what it's like to you probably don't, Sheikh Saeed. And many of you out of Pakistani, maybe many of you grew up with your fathers, you know what I mean? And although your father was there, he beat you half of the time. The other half of the time he's yelling at you, right? The other half of the time he's asleep or, out doing whatever he's doing. For all of the cultures who believe that African American dads are just somehow missing for no reason other than the fact that these are just lazy and they don't want to take care of their children. Do you know what it's like to grow up without a father? And then to have you go on the minbar in a very insensitive manner say, oh, most of them don't even know who their fathers are. If you were to ask them, who's your father, they would say, I don't know where my father is. Like, you playing with a very sensitive issue. There are grown men right now who did not grow up with their fathers that are still reconciling issues from their childhood due to not having their fathers around. Do you know what that's like? Obviously, you don't, because if you did, you probably wouldn't have uttered such a callous comment. Do you know what it's like not to grow up with a father? Do you know what that feels like? And to get on a minbar and mention that in such a callous way, in such a non-regarding way, didn't the Prophet ﷺ say, "Inna rajul la yatakallama bi kalimatin la yulqi laha balan wa yahwi biha fi an-nari ab'ad min 70 kharifa." Then the Prophet ﷺ said that perhaps a man may utter a word, yatakallama bi kalima, speak a word, la yulqi laha balan, and he will not even pay attention to the seriousness of what he's saying, and it will land him in the hellfire the distance of 70 years. Just one kalima, one sentence. And here you are falling into that. One sentence. You get on the minbar and you mention just in such a insensitive way. Most of them don't even know who their fathers are. If you were to ask them who is their fathers, they wouldn't even be able to tell you who their fathers are. And it's just like, yeah, but you got people, you don't need to reach out to African American community and use us as the validation for your comment. You could have used your own community. There are Somalis that don't even know who their fathers are. Somali girls who their fathers have never once told them, I love you, you're beautiful. Otherwise, she would never feel the need to remove her hijab. She would never feel the need to put up makeup on her face and to display herself like a woman who has self-hatred, as a woman who is searching for validation from anybody outside of herself. She would never feel the need to do that. So don't talk about absentee fathers. Talk about absentee fathers in your own damn culture. You gotta be kidding me. So now all of a sudden, African American culture, we now become the scapegoat. We now become the go-to whenever you want to talk about some degenerate, low-life behavior, as if other cultures don't have the same thing. Gotta be kidding me, man. Absentee dads, Sheikh Saeed, let me just say this, as well as all of the others who believe, people who are born and they don't have their fathers. First of all, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never met his father. So you want to talk about somebody who grew up without a father. Let's start with your last prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that was an honor for him. That was an honor for him because he was going to go through life and gain the lessons that his father could have given him so easily. But he's now going to learn those lessons in a more difficult and a more challenging way, which builds character. Struggle builds character. You understand? Me not growing up with my father, I don't think that I would have become the man that I would have become if my father was in my life. I look at my boys and I look at my children, very, we just grew up differently. I don't want to say anything bad about my boys, but we're different. Let's just say that. We're different. We grew up differently. You know what I mean? Things that they are sensitive to are things that were nothing to me. You know what I mean? But that's the difference between growing up with a father and having that cushion versus not having a father and have to go out in the world and get all of your lessons out in the world. Struggle builds character, and I respect that. We don't look down on stuff like that, especially not when the legacy of our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, he started his life off not knowing his father. And then you have the audacity to get on the minbar and make mockery of a whole entire race of people who you claim did not grow up knowing their fathers, as if there's some type of shame in that. Is shame in that? It's honor in that. I'm not honoring the fact that the fathers are not there, because absentee dads exist in every culture. You know what I mean? And for many different reasons. We can't just shame a whole group of people because they grew up without their fathers. You don't know what that person's why is. You don't know what their condition was. You don't know what their situation was. Don't you know that? Let me give you another history lesson. Don't you know that during the Ronald Reagan, presidential campaign, he used the war on drugs, which was actually a war on the black family, Hamza Yusuf, a war on the black family under the guise of the war on drugs. He ran his entire campaign on the war on drugs, which was in fact a war on the black family, namely the black man and the family. They always go after the black man, the buck. They always go after the black man. You understand? He ran his entire campaign off of the war on drugs, which was in fact the war on the black family, namely the black fathers. So while, in the 1980s, Somalia was in a civil war with, tribal war with others and a border war with Ethiopians killing each other willingly, we were here in America being plotted on by our own government. Did you know that? We were here being plotted on by our own government. Imprisoned, addicted to drugs, and watching our women, sell us out for, or not necessarily sell us out, but choose, welfare and government assistance over our fathers. Many of us, our mothers had to choose. Because if you wanted government assistance, if you wanted welfare, you wanted government assistance, there could be no man in the house. And unfortunately, many of these women had children, and they had to think about those children. So they could not put down that they were married. They could not put down that there was a man in the house. And the man could not be around when, the government workers came by to check on the house. They usually, wallah al-azim, they used to come around to make sure no black man was in the house. No man was in the house. You understand? It was a war on the black family under the guise of a war on drugs. And then here you go migrating to America in the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, and you have the audacity to look at black people and say, oh, the breakdown of the black family, or, this, look at them, they're animals, they're savages, and you don't even understand the history. We are a group of people who our government has always been plotting on us from the day that we arrived at the shores of North America. That's a history lesson for you. For all of you guys thinking that, our fathers have just disappeared. Many of our fathers were addicted to drugs. Drugs that they pushed into our community to increase the police force, because the Irish were the police officers, the Italians, the Irish. All right, the Italians ran the cocaine business. The Irish ran the police business, and they're allowed to turn a blind eye, let the drugs come into the community so they can hire more police officers, so they can create more prisons, and they can put more black men into jail, or we can get them addicted to drugs. And we don't ever have to worry about competition. We don't ever have to worry about our children competing with their children, because their children grow up without fathers, their mothers are strung out on drugs, and they'll never make it. Statistically, they'll never make it. And our children get to go to Ivy League schools, Ivy League colleges. You understand? Yeah, you got to understand how this works, man. This is a whole movement, man. This ain't just, some, this is a whole movement, man. This is not just, So many of these fathers, you know, were not allowed to even be in the lives of their children. So I hope you guys understand now that, many black boys and girls growing up without their fathers, it wasn't just because their fathers were deadbeats. Not to mention poverty. When our mothers and fathers had problems in their marriage, they didn't have money to pay for, marital marriage counseling. They didn't have money to pay for that, nor did they have even a concept of that. The man just left. I mean, like, so many of these fathers didn't opt willingly to be absentee fathers, but were forced by sometimes unfair circumstances. Fast forward 30 years later, you immigrate to the US and you judge our entire culture based upon this Eurocentric worldview that everything that is white is right. And if white people in America are somehow treating African Americans as subclass citizens, that we might just in fact be deserving of that treatment. Some of y'all believe that we deserve to be treated the way that we're treated. We deserve to be shot by the police. We deserve to be put, in prisons at alarming rates. We deserve, disproportionately. We deserve that. Many of y'all believe that we deserve that. Many of you guys believe that we deserve that. I'm not saying that there weren't fathers that, that just totally stepped out on our mothers. I know I'm rubbing some of you guys the wrong way. It's bringing up some really uncomfortable feelings, but just listen. Just listen. We have to be balanced with this. I'm telling the narrative of our culture. You understand? This is not somebody outside of our culture. I'm telling the narrative of our culture. Some fathers did just step off. But when you think about why they stepped off, was it they stepped off because they didn't want to be in the lives of their children? Maybe that's what your mother told you. Maybe that's what your mom told you, and you grew up believing that your entire life. And you never even had a conversation with your father. Your father lived right around the corner. Your father lived right up the street. You never even had a conversation with your father because your view, your biases were formulated by your mother's narratives. you know. So the thing is that Sheikh Saeed, as well as any other imam that decides to speak on social issues, there are layers that you have to go through before you start addressing these issues, man. In such a broad way, you know what I mean? In such a broad and callous and dismissive and insensitive way. There's a whole level. There are levels to this. This not just, oh, these people are like this. You gotta dig deep and find out why these people are the way that they are. Why are their circumstances the way that they are? Otherwise, don't speak on it. Because you're gonna end up, here again, you're gonna make a fool of yourself. Have we not seen the pattern? Have we not seen the pattern of imams and public figures that start speaking about these issues and make huge mistakes? In addition, Sheikh Saeed, he said that most African Americans are the products of one night stands. Another gross inaccuracy that paints an entire culture of people as a bunch of degenerate lowlives whose only claim to existence is illegitimate sperm that was placed in the womb of their mothers. I don't just look at the statement, I look at the implications. What are you actually implying? What are you saying here? What are you saying here? Now, our only claim to existence as African Americans, our only claim to existence is the illegitimate sperm that was placed into the wombs of our mothers. Degenerate, low-life individuals who don't even know their fathers and who most of them are born from illegitimate sexual relations. Before I unpack this, I just want to say that we're all products of one-night stands. How long did it take for your mother to get pregnant with you? One night, right? It only took one night, right? So when you shame people and say they're all products of one night stands, we're all products of one night stands, actually. Right? When Sulaim, right? When Sulaim's son died, this is the mother of Anas ibn Malik, right? I'm going to give you some Islamic context, right? When Sulaim's son died, right? You know the hadith, right? Where she told nobody to tell, her husband. And then the husband came home, she cooked for him, she had sexual relations with him, and then she told him that his son died, right? Right. So they had sex that night. And in the morning, her husband went to the Prophet ﷺ to tell him what happened. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Did you guys have sexual relations last night?" And he said, "Yes." Abu Talha said, "Yes." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Barakallahu lakuma fi ghabiri laylatikuma fahamalat." The hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari, that she went to, that Abu Talha went to the Prophet ﷺ the next day, and he explained that, my son died, my wife came in, she cooked for me, she beautified herself for me, she had sexual relations with me, and then she told me that my son died. And the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Talha, "Did you guys have sexual relations last night? Were you intimate last night?" And he said, "Yes." The Prophet ﷺ made dua. He said, "May Allah bless you in your night last night." And then the narration mentions that the few days after that, she realized she was pregnant. It only took one night for her to get pregnant. So when we shame people, we say, "Oh, they're all products of one night stands." We're all products of one night stands, man. I don't really see the shame. Because basically what you're saying, let me unpack what he's saying. The deeper implication here is that African Americans are a byproduct of random sexually gratifying escapades between men and women who have no self-control. No plans of being mothers and fathers, just out randomly having sex, right? No plan to be a nuclear family, no plans at all. You're just products of one night stands, right? And therefore, and the deeper implication here is that because he was talking to, I believe he was in Kenya when he gave the khutbah, so he's talking to pretty much his people. He's basically saying that Somali women, basically shaming Somali women, as he has been accused of doing that often, shaming Somali women, that they should be ashamed of themselves for even entertaining a relationship with a man from an African American culture. That's basically what you're saying. The deeper implication here is that Somali women should be ashamed to even consider or entertain a relationship with people from this type of culture. How dare you? So let me say, yes, there are plenty of children in the African American community born out of wedlock. Here again, the appropriate term to use is not born from zina, fornication, and adultery, but children that are born out of wedlock. That is the politically correct way to say that, right? There are plenty of children in the African and African American community that are born out of wedlock. Absolutely. And yeah, to that point, like if Somali women like African American men, just like most women like African American men, white women have been loving African American men for the longest. You know what I mean? Like this is why they used to, cut the private part of the slave. When they wanted to, they castrated him. This is always, what they call penis envy. You know what I mean? And you have other cultures that have it as well. I've been to Arab communities, and they're very overprotective. When an African American man come around and he carries himself with some type of dignity or whatever, they get very insecure. Very, very. I lived in Saudi Arabia for many years. I have never seen a more race of insecure men in my life. In my entire life, very insecure. You know, not all of them, but many of them. You know what I mean? And it's not our fault that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala created African American men with this aura, this aura that attracts. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can't help that. So you're gonna shame us in front of your women, so your women, we look as distasteful as possible. And what you end up doing is creating more of an attraction. You know, my wife put a post out on her Facebook page. She said, may every Somali woman that is single find herself an African American man. Marry an African American man. Allahumma ameen. You know, I mean, like it's you know, it reminds me of something that Tupac said in one of his rhymes a long time ago. He said, "If we so inferior, then why do you fear us? If we so inferior and you paint us in this horrible manner, what are you afraid of? Allow what is natural to dictate the way." You know what I mean? Like if we inferior, we're a bunch of degenerates, we're a bunch of low lives and individuals, then allow people to discover that on their own. Why do you have to go so hard in trying to smear our honor, our reputation? You know what I mean? And that's one of the five things what Sheikh Yusuf Rios mentioned. One of the things that we need to survive as human beings is honor and dignity. And you took that away from us. And in the eyes of the people, you tried to strip us of that. Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. We have honored the children of Adam. He didn't say white men from the children of Adam, Somali men from the children of Adam. He said, we have honored the children of Adam. Every single culture, every single ethnic group has to have some level of dignity that gives them their standing, their foothold in society. And you want to take that away from us. God damn, like, I mean, what else can be taken away from us? You stripped us of we were stripped of our names, stripped of our languages, stripped of our cultures, stripped of our history. And now we fast forward 400 and some odd years later, we got Muslims who migrate to America and try to strip us of our dignity, even within the freaking Muslim community. Damn, like what else do y'all want from us? You want us to just completely disappear? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I mean, like, it's just really ridiculous that even in the Muslim community, there's still this push to discredit African Americans and African American culture. This is still a push. Like, what is it that y'all fear about us? Why are you so afraid? You know, and it's not our fault that, women from other cultures find us handsome, find us smart and intelligent. Meanwhile, you got some hating behind individual from another culture talking about, oh, you married this black man. Does he even know his mother? Does he even know his father? It's like, man, freak out of here with that, man. Nobody want to hear that, man. Get out of here. What are you afraid of? What are you scared of? White people have been doing this to us for generations. What are you afraid of? If you're smarter than we are, if you're more financially stable than we are, then why the redlining? Why can't we get houses in certain neighborhoods? Why can't we get loans to start small businesses? Why can't we have access the way that other cultures have access? Why is it Hispanics come to America and they get jobs, they get loans from the bank and they get houses and homes, and meanwhile we're still here, and then that gives you guys the privilege to sit back and say, well, my family migrated here from Pakistan, or my family came here from Tunisia, or my family came here from Jordan, and they build a business off of their backs or whatever the case. You had help. We gets no help. On top of the fact that we still got our own self-hating Negroes to deal with, crabs in the barrel. Every single time one managed to get to the top, you got everyone trying to pull them back down. We got too many obstacles, man. We got too many obstacles. Subhanallah al-Azim, man. So, yes, there are plenty of children amongst African Americans who are born out of wedlock. Plenty. Not all, but plenty. However, there are plenty born out of wedlock for reasons that we don't necessarily understand, and getting on the minbar and saying they are children of zina, what I mean, it's just, here again, very reckless with your words, very disrespectful, very insensitive, demoralizing, humiliating, and outright demeaning to an entire group of people. Such a horrible way to define an entire culture, most of whom make up the majority of the new converts to Islam, that you should be addressing. That you should be addressing, But let me tell you why many in the African American community are born with, born out of wedlock. The plight to separate the African American man and the African American woman goes back to antebellum slavery. Slaves in America, our ancestors, many of our ancestors, used to have to get married in secret. Used to have to get married in secret. Did you know that? It was illegal for slaves to get married. You understand? Do you guys follow me? It was illegal because marriage was seen as a civil right, and slaves didn't have any rights. And so they used to do exactly, Zing, they used to do what is a process called jumping the broom. Jumping the broom was also kind of depicted in the movie Roots. And maybe it'll probably do you guys some justice to go back and look at the movie Roots or read the book Roots. It was illegal for slaves to get married. Even though they were slaves under the conditions that they were under, they still wanted to be moral and get married. They still wanted to be moral and get married. And so they used to get married in secret in a process called jumping the broom, which is basically a wedding ceremony for slaves. And, here again, Caucasians jump in the mix, right? Jump in the mix. And in Britain, it was called the broomstick marriage, and it was deemed non-legally binding. So they had to come up with a legal way to make it illegal, as they do everything else. So in Britain, they called it the broomstick marriage, and they deemed it wasn't legally binding, meaning any black person or any white person, because you had white people who was doing that as well. It wasn't just blacks, but also whites as well, because some of their families, maybe they didn't want them. So, for them, it would have been considered eloping. It was considered eloping for them. But for blacks, we weren't even allowed to get married. Did you guys know that? I'm just boggled when you get on the minbar and say that these children they're born out of zina. They don't even know who their fathers is. Like, do you even know the history of these people who you're talking about? Do you even know their history? And I mean, some of us could use a history lesson or two as African Americans. So slave marriages were not even recognized during slavery because, according to the law, marriages was a civil contract, and civil contracts required for the consent of free people, and slaves were not free people. So in many African American communities, people don't really get married, and some kind of just settle with one another, which is called a civil marriage, a common law marriage, where many of our parents, maybe they didn't legally get married, go to the courts and legally get married, just like many of us as Muslims are not legally married by the courts, but we got married in the masjid. What would make jumping the broom for slaves who were not allowed to get married legally, what would make jumping the broom for slaves any different than going to the masjid to marry a woman, or marry a second wife or a third wife, or whatever the case may be, because I wasn't able to do it legally? You have many Muslims in many cultures who don't go to the court and get married legally. They get married in the masjid. And I mean, it's not, in some instances, it's not even recognized. That shahada, that marriage certificate that comes from the imam, in many instances is not even recognized as a legal form of marriage. So in our culture, in our culture, you have what is called common law marriage, where if two people have been together for a certain amount of time, 7 years, 6 years, it differs from, from state to state. But, they would be considered married. They would be considered married. So for you to get on the minbar and say most of these children are born out of zina, our mothers and fathers, my mother and father were never legally married, but my mother and father were together for years. 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 And so even according to common law marriage, they would have been considered married. So it's not, and then you got African Americans who co-signing that bull crap. Yeah, my parents never got married. How long was your parents together? They were long enough to make you. Did your father split soon as you were born? No, he might have hung around for a little bit or whatever the case may be. Years and years went by. You got brothers and sisters. You got siblings that came along from that situation. And you sitting here co-signing this bull crap because you ignorant as hell of your own culture. It's really sad, man. Sad to see African Americans co-signing, disparaging comments about their own freaking culture. There's no greater representation of self-hatred than that. Self-hating Negroes, man. You gotta be kidding me, man. So the fact of the matter is that maybe many of our parents were not legally married, but common law marriage, you know what I mean? Common law marriage is recognizable in our states, in many states. In New Jersey, which is where I'm from, I believe it's 7 years. Common law marriage. They are considered legally married. It's just really sad, man. It's just pure ignorance, man. Pure ignorance. So for all of you saying, oh, we were born out of zina, you were not born out of zina. Stop accepting that narrative. You're doing the same exact thing when you go to high school and you open your world history book, your social studies book, and there's something in there related to Aboriginal people, related to Native Americans, or related to African Americans. We just accept, eyes wide shut. You just accept. You don't have the audacity to say, that's not true. I'm not accepting that. Christopher Columbus discovered America, and so now we have a whole day off, Columbus Day. Bull, you know what? I'm not accepting that, and you're not going to force me to accept that. You can give me a million tests. I'm going to give you the same damn answer. Mark it wrong. I don't give a damn. Use a permanent marker. I don't give a damn. I'm not marking nothing right so I can get a good grade if I know that the information is inaccurate. Bull crap. What year did Christopher Columbus discover America? A, 18 such and such. B, 16 such and such. C, 15 such and such. I'm not answering that question because the question is inaccurate. The question itself, because he didn't discover America. And then you got this dumbass teacher who marked the question wrong based upon some misinformation that you were given in school because you went to college and put your mind on pause and allowed a professor to fill your mind up with all of this inaccurate information. And then you go into the public school system, continuing on with the miseducation of African Americans. I'm sorry. I ain't buying that, man. Gotta be kidding me, man. Nah, I'm not doing that, man. I work in the school. I'm a teacher myself, and sometimes I remember one time I hear Wallah Adim, I was smiling. I'm sitting in the hallway during my prep period, and I'm grading some papers, and I could hear the other classroom, the doors open, and it was a young Egyptian kid in the classroom, and the teacher said, "Oh, you're from Egypt, so you're Egyptian." He said, "No, I'm African American." He said, "Because I'm Egyptian, but I was born in America, so I'm African American." The teacher's like, "No, you're not African American." He said, "No, I'm African American." I'm like, "Yes, this kid understands. He gets it." One of my students. I love this dude, man. You know what I mean? But he gets it. You understand? And his father gets it. He said, "No, my parents are from Egypt, but I was born in America, so technically I'm an African American." And his skin is just as pale, you know what I mean? But he's clear about his identity. Clear about his identity. So when you see someone, and the fact that Sheikh Saeed, as well as Hamza Yusuf and many others who have uttered, such, egregious comments about African Americans, the reason why they can say these things about us is because they don't see us as an extension of themselves, right? When Somalis, when East Africans, West Africans, when they come, you understand? When they come to America, they don't identify with us. They don't see us as an extension of themselves. And when you see someone as an extension of yourself, there's a degree of compassion and mercy and understanding, as well as a sense of overprotectiveness, overprotection of them, because you see them as an extension of yourself. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pay attention. When you see someone as an extension of yourself, there's a level of overprotection that you have of them. There's a level of compassion and love and mercy that you have for them because you see them as an extension of yourself. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Fatima tu bid'atun minni wa ومن أغضبها يغضبني وأغضبني وما يؤذيها يؤذيني. The Prophet ﷺ said, Fatima is a part of me. You understand? Fatima is a part of me. And what hurts her hurts me. That's what happens when you see someone as an extension of yourself. Somalis don't come to America, and many, because I know some very beautiful Somalis, men who, will go to bat for you. And you know what I mean? Like, they stand in solidarity with African Americans. I know that. Many, but you have many who come, especially the uncles and the aunties, the older generation. They come here and they don't identify with us. They don't identify with our struggles. They don't see us as an extension of themselves, evidenced by the fact that you sever ties from us. You know what I mean? You sever ties from us. When you see someone as an extension of yourself, there's a level of protection. Let me bring them in. Somalis, alhamdulillah, I respect the fact that you come here, you pull your resources together within your own networks, and you build masajid, you build duksi, you know what I mean? Like, you're teaching the Quran, wallahi, much respect. But you don't go after pulling the young African Americans in, because honestly, in many of the Indo-Pak Arab communities, we don't belong, man. We don't fit in. We don't. We stand out like sore thumbs, man. Just on the nature of our skin color, skin complexion, and the way that we dress. They see us dress come in. Sometimes I come in a mess shit with jeans on, and if the person doesn't know who I am, they don't even give me the salams. Meanwhile, I teach your child. Your child is one of my students. Wallah aladim, I kid you not. Some of the parents, so detached, never came in and had a meeting with me, don't even know who the child's Islamic studies teacher is. Sometimes I'll go to the masjid, I'm, dressed like I'm dressed now, and they'll walk right past you, won't even give me the salams. It's just like, I teach your son in my class. You got to be kidding me. This is a joke. Just on the strength of the way that we are dressed. Just on the strength of the way that we talk. You know what I mean? But we don't get pulled in. We don't get pulled in to be made to feel comfortable. You don't have to go to this masjid or that masjid to be made to feel uncomfortable. You are always welcome in our communities. The doors are always open. You understand? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said that comment to Ali, his own cousin, Fatima's husband, when he wanted to marry a second wife, and he saw how bothered she was by that, and he went to Ali and he said, Fatima bid'atu minni. Fatima is a part of me. وَيُؤْذِينِ مَا أَذَاهَا. And what harms her harms me. What harms her harms me. That's when you see somebody as an extension of yourself. Children being born out of wedlock is a dilemma and a challenge that every society fears, at one time or another. And every, society is, faced with, the plethora of reasons that stem from poverty, ignorance, low morale based upon, social marginalization and systematic oppression, it's or just human error. That's not something that we get on the minbar and we shame people for. We don't get on the minbar on Friday, on Jumu'ah, the best of all days, and shame a whole entire race of people for, being born out of wedlock, without considering the circumstances and the situations in which that has created that problem. People are born out of wedlock sometimes due to poverty. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, "Lo kana al-faqru rajulan laqataltuhu." That if poverty was a man, I would kill him, because poverty makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. Number two, ignorance. People just ignorant. Number three, low morale, when a person doesn't really care about themselves and doesn't care about, the greater scope of, their lives. They just make reckless decisions. And then some people just human error. Being born, there were many that were born out of wedlock during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Were they not? Were they not people that were born out of wedlock, who, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the revelation, these individuals became adults and converted to Islam? I'm going to prove to you. I'm going to prove to you. I don't say nothing except I give you Dalil. I'm not that person. All right. But, there are a plethora of reasons that a person, being born out of wedlock. It's not just simply the result of unbridled desire for sexual gratification. For if that were the case, as implied by, Sheikh Said's comment, then it would make them a culture of degenerate savages. And what does it say about our women? What does it say about our women if we are a nation of people that are born out of zina? Well, what does this say? What is the deeper implication about women, black women? What are you saying about black women? They just sleep around with anybody? They just sleep, black women, they just sleep with anybody? Here again, black women is always on the chopping block, man. We're always coming for our women. I'm sorry. Buck stops here. You're not coming for ours, man. You're not coming for our women. I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. Black women, more than anything, they carry this culture on their shoulders. You understand? And I'd be damned if I allow anybody to imply, or indicate, something being, inherently wrong with our women. Our women have carried this culture, man, from generations. You understand? And any man, who hears a comment like that, like, you have to think about, like, what are the deeper implications? What are you saying? If we are a nation of people that are born out of fornication and adultery, what are you saying about our women? What does that say about the black woman? Right? Children being born out of wedlock was a challenge that even existed pre-Islam. And this means that there were individuals who embraced Islam, who essentially became companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who were products of poor decisions of their parents, possibly influenced by the prevalence of ignorance in their society, i.e., as Sheikh Said said, products of fornication and adultery. When you say you are a product of fornication and adultery, zina in Islam, fornication and adultery in Islam, is despicable. It's a heinous crime. It is one of the worst sins, the most serious of sins in Islam. And to refer to a person's origin as a child of zina, meaning your origin of existence is a foul, heinous sin, is no different than Christians saying that you were born in sin. No different. You understand? It's no different than Christians saying you were born in sin. Now you have Muslims saying, "Oh, you born out of zina." Zina in Islam is a haram, is one of the gravest sins, heinous sins, hated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're now attributing a person's origin of existence from this particular sin. La wallahi, man, you dead wrong, man. Dead wrong, man. You wrong on levels that exceed explanation. You are wrong on levels that exceed explanation, man. Serious. I really hope that you take a deep look at, your comments, man. However, the Prophet ﷺ never got on the minbar. Never got on the minbar and condemned people who were, as Sheikh Said put it, products of zina. Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, the hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari, gave us a very vivid depiction of what pre-Islamic Arab culture looked like as it relates to the relationship between husband and wife. I'm almost done. As it relates to the relationship between husband and wife. Hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Aisha, she said, أن الزواج في الجاهلية كان على أربعة أنحاء. That marriage or male-female relations were 4 types prior to Islam. 4 types. I want you, this is Aisha giving us a clear depiction of what pre-Islamic Arab culture looked like. Because we don't do history, right? We don't do history. So therefore, that is a big part of connecting all of the dots and trying to find out where we fit in this beautiful religion. We can't find out where we fit in because we don't know where it started. We don't know how to make the connections. We have yet to connect the dots. Aisha said that in pre-Islamic Arab culture, male and female relations were 4 types. She said the first, منها نكاح الناس اليوم يخطب الرجل إلى الرجل وليته أو ابنته فيصدقها ثم ينكحها. The first type is the type of marriage that we have in Islam today, where a man proposes to another man for his daughter or for a girl that he is responsible for, his niece, his, whoever he's responsible for. He gives her a dowry and then he marries her. That was the first type. So that did exist in pre-Islam. So Islam did not come with marriage. Arabs were getting married, were in the habit or the tradition of marriage pre-existing even before Islam. She said, so the first type of relationship between men and women was the type of relationships that we have now in Islam, and that was where a man proposes to another man for his daughter, gives her a dowry, and then marries her. She said the second type of pay attention, the second type of male-female relationships, he said, ونكاح آخر كان الرجل يقول لامرأته إذا طهرت من طمثها أرسلني إلى فلان استبدعي منه فيعتزلها زوجها ولا يمسها أبدا حتى يتبين حملها من ذلك الرجل. The second type of male-female relations is where a man would be in a relationship with a woman. However, this man was not able to produce a child. This would be what they call polyandry, right? Where a woman has multiple male partners. That existed in pre-Islamic Arab culture. That wasn't considered necessarily marriage. It was a relationship. Nonetheless, she says, so a man would be in a relationship with a woman. He was not able to produce children. So when she got off of her menstrual cycle, he would say, send me to this man over here. And she would go and she would have sex with another man. And her current husband would not touch her until it became clear that she was pregnant by that man. فإذا تبين حملها أصابها زوجها, and when she found out she was pregnant by the other man, then the husband, then and only then would the husband be able to have sexual relations with her. وإذا أحب وإنما يفعل ذلك رغبة في نجابة الولد فكان نكاح الاستبضاع, that the man would resume sexual relations with his wife until she gave birth to that other man's child, and she did this because she was seeking a child. That was pre-Islamic Arab culture, right? Polyandry. She said, nikahun akhar, another type of relationship between men and women, يجتمع رهط دون العشرة فيدخلون على المرأة كلهم فيصيبها. Aisha said, the third type of relationship between man and woman is where a group of multiple men would have sex with one woman. Less than 10, not exceeding 10. But all of these men would have relations with this one woman. كلهم يصيبها. All of them would have sexual relations with her. فإذا حملت ووضعت ومر عليها الليال بعد أن تضع حملها أرسلت إليهم فلم يستطيع رجل منهم أن يمتنع. That once she delivered the child, once she delivered the baby, she would call all of the men that had sex with her back, and then she would point out one randomly and say, the child is yours, and he would not have a right to stop. He would not have a right to stop that process. He would have to consent to it. Meaning more than one man, up to, no more than 10, would have sexual relations with the same woman. Because she knew that having multiple partners of this magnitude, the chances of getting pregnant would be greater rather than having sexual relations with one particular man. Here again, we're all born from a one-night stand. But you would never say that of any of the Sahaba. You would never say that. You would never even think to say that about something that went on pre-Islam. But it existed. And many of those people were some of the great Sahaba that we know today. Many of them. Aisha wasn't speaking, hundreds of years before the Prophet ﷺ received revelation. She's speaking current Islamic culture prior to the Prophet ﷺ receiving revelation. This was going on in their society prior to the Prophet ﷺ receiving revelation. I'm using this to show that this dynamic exists in every single culture, but we always single out African Americans as if we are an anomaly with degeneracy and savagery. I want you guys to take a look at yourselves, man. Take a look at your own cultures and stop with this, duplicitous behavior. That you come in front of us like you the most picture perfect culture. Meanwhile, you're shaming us for being African Americans to the point where many African Americans don't even know who the hell they want to be. We convert to Islam and we completely disassociate ourselves from our culture. Why? Because you guys have shamed us so much. You have made our culture look so distasteful that when an African American converts to Islam, he automatically wants to disassociate himself from his own culture. We do what's called cultural apostasy. You understand? So here it is, this woman has sexual relations with up to 10 men. 10 men. And then once she delivers the child, does she know who the father is? Exactly. No, she doesn't. She's randomly selects. She calls all of those men back. She randomly selects, you are the father. And because he agreed to that process, he doesn't even have a right to object. He doesn't have a right to object. حتى يجتمعوا عندها تقول لهم قد عرفتم الذي كان من أمركم وقد ولدت فهو ابنك يا فلان وتسمي من أحبت باسمه فيلحق به والدها ولا يستطيع أن يمتنع به الرجل. And that was that. Whose name does the child get? The child gets the name of the man that she selected randomly. That was the deal. I'll have sexual relations with all of you guys, and when I get pregnant, I will decide which one of you is the father, and you don't have a right to refuse. You understand? Aisha said number 4. The fourth, which was just basically prostitution. Al-Baghaya, prostitution. كنا ينصبن على أبوابهن رايات تكون علما. That these women, they used to put little flags on their windows to indicate to the men in the society. This is pre-Islam, right before the Prophet ﷺ received revelation. Hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari. You ask me no questions, I tell you no lies. Ask you no questions, I tell you. You ask me no questions, I tell you no lies. This was pre-Islamic Arab society. She said the fourth type of relationship was al-baghaya, prostitution. And this is where women would hang flags in their windows to indicate to men going by that she was available. And the men would go and sleep with them or whatever the case may be, which still exists today. Aisha, she ended the hadith by saying, فَلَمَّا بُعِثَ مُحَمَّدٌ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بِالْحَقِّ هَدَمَ نِكَاحَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ كُلَّهُ إِلَّا نِكَاحَ النَّاسِ الْيَوْمِ. Aisha said, anha, she said, and when the Prophet, this shows you that this lasted all the way up until the time that the Prophet ﷺ received revelation. She said, when the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a messenger, he destroyed all of these previous relationships between males and females. And the only thing that Islam acknowledges or recognizes is the type of marriage that people do today, where a man goes to another man to propose. So, as you can see, even pre-Islamic Arab culture had its share of debauchery and immorality. And the Prophet ﷺ never shamed the Arabs for doing this. He never shamed them. He never said, oh, you guys in Jahiliyyah, y'all were doing this. He understood the ignorance of the people. Why can't we just accept that? That some people are just inherently ignorant and don't know any better. Some people are driven by, poverty. As you can see, they were prostitutes. They were selling themselves. The Prophet ﷺ even mentioned in a hadith of the prostitute who, went down and got a dog, something, and Sheikh Saeed actually mentioned that hadith in his khutbah, which I believe was a great khutbah on polygyny. It was a great khutbah on polygyny until he got to this one place. And you feeling yourself, the dopamine levels are high, and you just allow what was genuine, natural, just to come out of your mouth. And now you're dealing with the repercussions of that. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ, what he did was he clarified what was acceptable according to Islamic standards, and he tried to make the pre-Islamic culture of immorality look as distasteful as possible without making them feel shamed for their customs. He never made them feel shame. Why do y'all do that to us as African Americans? You make us feel ashamed to even be African Americans. Meanwhile, your children, Pakistani children, Indian children, Desi children, Arab children, you all walking around with Adidas sweatsuit on, and Adidas, You walking around with Yeezys on, the latest rap music or whatever the case may be. But when an African American comes into the masjid, you shame us. You look down upon us with such disdain to separate us from our own culture. Meanwhile, your children have embraced everything about our culture. Every single thing about our culture, you guys have embraced, down to the music, down to the movies, down to the dress, down to the language. But us as African Americans, nope, we are still deplorable. We are still deplorable in your sight. But yet your children have taken on our entire culture. Our culture right now is what gives your children relevance. Our children right now is what gives your children relevance. This is what makes your children feel like they belong to something. They belong to African American culture. Meanwhile, you have shamed us for being African Americans. And that's a fact. And I'm sorry. If I make you uncomfortable, you got to live in that uncomfortable space. You got to live in that discomfort, because I'll be damned if I change who I am. I'll be damned if I change how I talk. I'll be damned if I change my dress. I'm still going to wear Timbs. I'm still going to wear jeans. I'm still going to wear a baseball cap if I decide to. I'm still going to wear polo. I'm still going to wear Gucci. Well, not Gucci, but I'm still going to dress the way my culture dictates. The Prophet ﷺ never came into a society of people and made them change their dress. The Prophet ﷺ never changed his dress. What do you think he wore when he became the Messenger of Allah ﷺ? You think he changed his dress? He wore the same clothes that he used to wear prior to him becoming a prophet. Yet we are shamed for not coming in the masjid wearing a kufi. The Prophet ﷺ never wore a kufi. I'm sorry. The Prophet ﷺ never wore. Why is it okay for you to buy Adidas, for your children, to buy hoodies for your children, to buy Yeezys for your children? But yet, when you see an African American come into the masjid wearing the same thing that you bought for your children, you automatically assume he's a thug. Why can your children wear it and they're fine, but when you see an African American wearing it, you clutch in your pocketbook. You don't want to give salams because you just automatically assume that we're just some degenerate race of lowlives. Gotta be kidding me, man. This has to be a joke. And then we sitting around talking about one ummah. You gotta be kidding me. You got this guy on YouTube, Facebook, live in Saudi Arabia. I ain't gonna say no names. If you know, you know. You run around talking about there's no racism in Islam, posting pictures of yourself with people from different cultures. You're singing a whole damn different tune today, ain't you? You singing a whole different tune today, ain't you? We all one ummah, mashallah. I guess Sheikh Saeed's comment really let you know that we're not really all one ummah. We're not really all one ummah. Let's be clear about that. You're going on this whole campaign. We're all one ummah. There's no racism in Islam. Posting pictures of yourself from Saudi Arabia. And then now you're singing a whole different tune. Now you posting videos on, the black father is always around. Like, man, dude, please, man, go kick rocks. Go have several seats. Because you should have never opened your mouth about issues that were above your pay grade to begin with. It's a fact. If you know who I'm talking about, then you know. I'm not going to say no names, but, it is what it is. And so when we go back to Aisha's statement, some of those individuals converted to Islam. When the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet, some of them converted to Islam, right? And they were born in that culture and eventually accepted Islam. And when they embraced Islam, they were forgiven for their past errors. So when you say that we were born from zina, we were forgiven. We've forgiven that. Why you got to remind us on the minbar about something that our parents did that we had no control over? We were forgiven for that. We didn't share in that. We don't share in the sin of our parents. Our parents were ignorant. They made some mistakes or whatever the case may be. And you got to remind us of that. You got to give a khutbah and speak to a whole different culture, shaming an entirely different culture who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave them for that. Gotta be kidding me, man. Occasionally, the remnants of pre-Islamic Arab culture with respect to immorality reared its ugly head. There are a number of hadith that deal with the Prophet ﷺ dealing with people who committed zina. There was a woman from, the tribe of Ghamidiyya who, the Ghamidiyya hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, where she committed zina and she had a baby from that. And then the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba stoned her to death, and asked one of the Sahaba to take that child. That child later on became one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Did he not? And he was a child born of zina, right in the Prophet ﷺ's community. The Prophet ﷺ gave that child to one of the Sahaba to look after, and they stoned her to death. You understand? That child being raised by one of the Sahaba, eventually became a companion himself. But the Prophet ﷺ dealt with those individuals with compassion, with understanding. I think I kind of made my point. I don't want to keep, belaboring the point. I think I kind of made my point. So I think what Sheikh Saeed, what you did, it wasn't necessarily a slip of the tongue. It was a slip of your heart, man. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a slip of your heart. You was high off of dopamine on the minbar, and you spoke exactly how you felt, man. And that's cool. But we're gonna educate you. You know what I mean? It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a slip of the heart, right? Your inhibitions were lowered with the increase of dopamine, and you had a level of comfort speaking around people, because you would have never said that in a community of African Americans. This is how you know you were conscious of what you were saying, because wallah al-azim, out of all of the communities that you have ever lectured at, you've lectured in front of African Americans before, and you would have never said that in a crowd of African Americans. You would have never said that. And that's how you know you were conscious about what you were saying, because you would have never said that in a crowded musalla with African Americans. You understand? That's how you know you knew what you were talking about. You knew what you were saying. So don't say, it was a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a slip of the heart. And you spoke exactly how you felt. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed it to happen so we can have this discussion today. I'm sure that you guys in your own homes, in your own circles, on your own Facebook pages, at this point, now we're going to start a conversation, and we need to have, it speaks levels to a deeper issue within the leadership in the Islamic community, because Hamza Yusuf said it, and there were others who uttered similar comments that were derogatory and demeaning of African Americans and African American culture. And that means that now, alhamdulillah for social media, because now we have a way to hold people accountable. The masajid are not going to hold people accountable. So next Friday, another masjid will still invite him, and I'm advising the Somali community that if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you love the truth, which I know you do, then you will hold him accountable. We are not attending any more of your lectures. We are not attending any more of your sermons. If you're giving a khutbah at this masjid, I'm going somewhere else. I don't give a damn if I got to travel, but I will never sit in front of you again until you get some cultural diversity training, until you understand the implications of your words and the power of your words and how they affected a whole nation of people. You understand? No, he wouldn't have said it at any African American masjid, period. That's how you know he knew exactly what he was saying. But he needs to be held accountable. Unfortunately, the masajid, they just want to keep business as usual. So they're not going to hold anybody accountable. Only people they hold accountable is people like me, African Americans, who come to their masjid and say something they didn't want you to say, and then they don't invite you back anymore. Meanwhile, your imam gets on the minbar every Friday and disrespects people, and yet you never hold him accountable. You never hold him accountable. So, alhamdulillah for social media. The elders, they control the minbars. The youth, you guys control social media. The elders, y'all can have the masajid, because the elders attend the masajid anyway. You can have the minbar, you can have the masajid. The young people, you guys control social media. And if the masajid are not going to hold them accountable, we will hold them accountable on social media. Right now, we hold in court. We read out all of his charges. We passed on the indictment. We indicted him. And now we reading out his charges. And now we sentencing him. We hold in court right here on social media. Don't tell me we don't have power. We have the power. The masajid don't have the power. We have the power. The power has always existed with the people. And the Prophet ﷺ gave the power to the people by empowering them with knowledge and with understanding and with autonomy. You understand? The Prophet ﷺ empowered people. He empowered women. He empowered slaves. When Zahid ibn Haram, he said that nobody will buy me. I'm a slave. I'm worthless. Nobody will buy me. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Bal anta indallahi ghalin." He said, "No, to Allah you are priceless. I don't care if that's how the people see you. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are priceless." He empowered him, separated him. You don't derive your validation from how people see you. You derive your validation by way of your connection to God. You understand? That is empowering. There's nothing more empowering than that. There's nothing that is more empowering than that. And the Prophet ﷺ did that. He did it to women. He did it to slaves. He did it to everyone in his community. And the fact of the matter is that in many of the masajid, many imams have got on the minbar for many years and have said, grossly inaccurate and disrespecting and disparaging comments that had community members walk away feeling some type of way, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. You could go to the board, complain, they're not going to do nothing. You can, all right, then cool. Then we're going to hold you accountable here. And that applies to me as well. I would like to know that if I said something that was inaccurate, that you approach me the same exact way. At the end of the day, you guys can do whatever you want to do. I spoke my piece. I said what I needed to say, and you guys can take it from there. I don't really have anything else to say about the issue. Honestly, I don't. I think he understands the gravity of what he said at this point, and and then the apology, the half-ass apology. You know what I'm saying? Like, that wasn't an apology. That was a response to the criticisms and the response to the people, the weight of what was coming down on him. That wasn't an apology. Apology is self-reflective. There was no self-reflection. There was I want to advise, and then you had the audacity to accuse people, in so many words, talking about myself. You know what I mean? Like, you have the audacity to say, "Oh, well, when you were in the grinder, we spoke out on your behalf and defended you." I never asked anybody to defend me. If you saw that I was being oppressed, your defense was of the truth, not of me. I was just a pawn in the middle of that. You understand? I was a pawn in the middle of that. So don't say you defended me to muzzle me or to make me be quiet. Because defense of the truth is not about building constituency. You understand? Defending the truth is not about building constituency. Wrong is wrong, and wrong is wrong is wrong is wrong. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And as Umar radiallahu anhu, there has to be some level of self-reflection. The Prophet Umar radiallahu anhu was walking down the street one day, and he said, "Ya ibn Khattab, la tattaqiyanna Allah, ala yu'adhibaka Allah." Oh, Ibn Khattab, oh son of Khattab, you are either going to fear Allah or Allah is going to punish you. He's talking to himself. That's self-reflective. He had self-reflective character. You don't get off the minbar, go listen to your khutbah to see, did I did something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Did I perhaps, wallah al-azim, every time I give a khutbah, on my way leaving the masjid, I always listen to the khutbah again to see, did I make a mistake? Did I say something that was wrong? Did I say something that was inaccurate? Did I say something that, hell, that could incriminate me? Like this, there's tons, you have to be self-reflective. You never even got off the minbar and thought for a moment that I offended an entire race of people. Evidenced by the fact that you posted it on social media to make it even worse. You posted it on social media. You never even sat down and listened to your words while you were in a state where you weren't high off of dopamine. You can listen with a clear mind and say, I probably shouldn't have said that. Let me not post that. I'm gonna fall back on that. And it's just like subhanallah, man. So, as I said, I think that this was a good thing that happened. We had this conversation, and hopefully this is just the start, because there are going to be more comments. They're going to be more. They're going to be this. It's going to be more mistakes, and when they happen, we have to, we have to have that conversation, and may we meet at a higher level of understanding at the end of it. So, with that being said, I don't know if he posted it, but he knew it was there. He knew it was posted. You knew it was posted, and you still allowed it to be posted. And the only reason why it was taken down was because of, the type of controversy that it caused. So with that being said, وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I know that all Somalis don't think like that. Please, he does not represent the Somali community as a whole. I know that. I know that, and I don't think African Americans have lost any love for Somalis, and some people I had to delete, and ban them from my Facebook page and ban them from Instagram because you just got disrespectful, man. There's no need to get disrespectful. There's no need to get disrespectful. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, being disrespectful. So we'll stop here. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وسبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. You guys have been great. Thank you for your time. Um, Funny enough, I just received a text message from Sheikh Saeed. Just seen it come up on my phone. He just now texted me after we talked yesterday. We still gonna have a conversation because I still think that he needs to be steered in the right direction. Here again, it's not personal. You know what I mean? I don't take it personal. I just think that it was a statement that came from a place, and if so, then we need to have a conversation. Let me educate you. Let me educate you. There's no need to get disrespectful and start posting stuff about culture shaming and stuff like that. The stuff that I saw being posted, wallah aladim, if you post something on my page and it's disrespectful, I'm going to block you. I'm going to ban you from my page. And then you can go to your own page or you can go to somebody else's page and troll. But being disrespectful, man, like your feelings about a person has nothing to do with how you treat a person. You can disagree with someone and you can, not like that person, but you don't have to treat the person like that. You don't have to treat the one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Right? And this whole, like we need to start responding to things with knowledge, not through emotion. Emotional responses only make the situation worse. Go sit back, gather your thoughts, think about what was being said, and then respond. But when you respond preemptively, when you respond prematurely, and you respond from a place of, emotional pain, you're only going to make the situation worse. No, he just texted me. I just saw the text message come up on my phone as we're talking right now. And soon as I get up, I close down what we're talking about. Inshallah, I will finish my conversation with him. But this is but I urge the Somali community, please hold him accountable, man. Hold him accountable. And in the African American community, we need to do the same exact thing. We need to do the same exact thing. If an African American imam gets on the minbar and he's spewing, hate, he's, inciting, ignorance and inciting, inaccurate, information and things like that. We need to hold them accountable. And if the masajid won't hold them accountable, then social media is the only weapon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and we need to utilize that. How do we as African American Muslims unite in light of not just this situation, but situations of racial discrimination? I mean, there are groups that have been formulated. There are initiatives. The one is in Canada now, and I think that we need to have several initiatives, because what ends up happening is that when we create these organizations and we create these, initiatives, sometimes even within those organizations, and it's discrimination even within there. They don't want certain people. You got everybody want to be, right? The Black Muslim Initiative, exactly. You know what I mean? Like we need to create that here. And although we do have some organizations, we do have, Black Muslim, organizations and initiatives that have been created. But even with that, many of those initiatives and many of those organizations are toxic as well, man. They don't want to let certain people in, and there's discrimination